What is going on, everybody? For today's video, I want to do something completely different. A lot of people have been asking me to do this, do like a walk around. And also I kind of want to make it an informational video about Variettas in general. I get a ton of questions on this car. People who have followed me for a long time kind of know what it is, but a lot of people have no idea what it is, what it started out as, stuff like that. So I'm going to try and cover as much of the informational part as I know and that I can. And then we'll also go around the car, and obviously it's pretty modified. So I've done a bunch of stuff to it over the past few years that I've owned it, and we're gonna go around the car, check it all out, and go over everything. So yeah, that is the plan, and we're just gonna get right into it. Okay, so if you're into JDM cars, import cars, you know what this is because of the front end. It's an S15 Silvia. Pretty recognizable, unmistakable. But the thing about this car that a lot of people are confused by when they first see it and haven't heard of it is the fact that this is a convertible S15, which if they've never heard of a Varietta, they just assume that it's custom and that I did something or somebody did something, basically cut the roof off a regular S15 and made it into a convertible, which is not the case, but also kind of the case. I don't know 100% of the facts about this car, like years and stuff like that, but this is a 1999. They made S15s from 99 to I believe 02. I'm not exactly sure how many years they made the Varietta, but what I do know is this car and all Variettas started out as a base model S15. So it'd be a Spec S, non-turbo. And the one big misconception about these cars is that everyone thinks that they're always automatic, and that is not the case. The S13s, when they were convertibles, they were all automatic. If there's a manual, it's been swapped. But the S15s actually came with the factory manual, but the engine was always NA, naturally aspirated, non-turbo, 2-liter. So it's an SR20 DE with a 5-speed manual, not the 6-speed like the Spec R got, but that is factory. So I believe the numbers are something like total production number was 1,143. Out of those 1,143, 444 of them are manual. So little under half, but actually not a bad percentage wise of like total production. It's actually quite a few were manual. So something else a lot of people are very confused about this car is that they believe that it's custom made, or they know that it's made by Autech. Autech also has a regular S15 like coupe version with a better NA engine, but it's still NA. This car does not have that engine. A lot of people are under the assumption that because it's made by Autech that it has the Autech engine, but it doesn't. It didn't get any performance benefits whatsoever. This was basically designed as like a touring, and it was actually marketed towards females mainly. So basically all of these Variettas started out as fully built S15 cars. They were then sent to Autech, and what happened then is kind of unknown, but I've gone through this car. This car I stripped to bare metal, so I've been like inside and out this car. As far as I can tell, the quarter panels have been completely changed because of this cut here. The trunk is obviously very different. The S15 coupe trunk basically comes to here, and the quarters have a top section that continues back from here, and then it's basically just a cutout of that, and then like the fastback style, whatever. So the quarter panels have been completely changed. Doors, fenders, hood, whole dimensional being of the car is completely the same. I've heard some people, even some like famous YouTubers, say that the Varietta is not an S chassis and it's completely different. It's not. It 100% is an S chassis. The suspension arms, you know, motor transmission, drivetrain, everything interior is all the exact same. It's an S15 S chassis through and through. There's just a few things that change. So like I said, the quarter panels are different. Trunk obviously has been changed because it's massive. It's basically the same size as the hood, front and back. So a lot of people say it looks like a giant tonneau cover on a truck. I get it, but I personally love it. I like it with the top down. I'll put the top up here in a minute and we'll take a look at that. And you can kind of see the overall shape of the car and how different it is with the roof up, with the roof down, and you know, compared to a regular S15. So when Autech got these cars, they pretty much just chopped the roof off and then changed all of the inner structure, because all behind the seat is different. These panels are completely different than the OEM S15. As far as that goes, everything else is the same. So those side skirts will fit on a normal S15, rear bumper, tail lights, everything is just regular S15. and basically just the top half of the car is what changed. And now that we've kind of gone over some of the facts and info about the car, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put the roof up and basically run it through the cycle of all of that and show how that works, and kind of go over some of the issues that I had with it, because it's an older car and they're very rare, so parts are extremely hard to find for this. So this is what it looks like with the roof down, and now we're going to show the process of putting the roof up. Yeah, now this is the profile of the car with the top up. You can see that the car no longer has a nice sloping fastback like the regular S15, and it kind of has this more notchback style. I honestly don't mind how the car looks like this. I think it looks pretty cool because it's just such a unique shape. A lot of people don't like it like this, but I really don't mind it. But admittedly, it does look much better with the top down. So while I was stripping this whole entire car and going through everything, I tore everything apart, and like I said, stripped it to bare metal. This roof panel, just the center is actually aluminum. I'm not sure why, probably a weight thing. This panel here is steel, but the center there is actually aluminum, and I never knew that until I actually got into it. This rear window, I looked and searched before I pulled it, because I took all the glass out, all the trim, everything. Before I did all that, I tried to look and see if they made a reproduction or anything of this window, or like a cross reference between some other Nissan. I couldn't find anything. So as far as I know, this window is a Varietta only window. So I was extremely careful when I was taking it out, but it was very, very nerve wracking. And I'm not really sure what would happen if you broke this. I guess you'd have to get a custom piece of glass made, but I'm just glad it didn't come to that, and that didn't happen. So we're gonna go into the trunk now that the roof is all up. There's actually no button in the car anywhere for the trunk. There is a button on the fob, but it's never worked. I think I have to put a new battery in it or something like that. So there's a key on the back of the trunk here. So you got to do that, which is kind of unfortunate because I was going to shave it, but there's no other way into the trunk without it. So now this is the interior of the trunk. I got super lucky. Every single piece of this, and there's a ton of separate pieces in this trunk. I got lucky. Everything's, here and included. That would have been from the factory. This is pretty clearly very different than the coupe. As far as I'm aware, the regular coupe trunk would basically come to here, and the strut towers and all that would be underneath your back window, just like the S14 would be in like that speaker panel. So this is all completely different. So all of these panels are basically, well, they are Varietta only. Mine's all in very good shape actually, and I'm really happy about that. This little leather type of cover here is basically telling you that when you have the roof down and you have this, kind of net thing out, you can't put anything on top of it. You can't have it obstructing anything, but you can put stuff underneath it, which there's maybe like 8 inches of space. When you put the roof down, it goes in the trunk and it really fills this entire trunk. So there's not much trunk space, but kind of an interesting fact. There was also, I think, about 10 or 12 sensors that run this entire system, and they all have to be functioning properly for the function of the roof to work. When I bought the car, none of it was working, so I bypassed it, and we'll go over that in a minute. But I just want to show the trunk empty, and then we're going to go ahead and put the roof back in, and we'll take a look, open the trunk once the roof is in, and we'll see what it looks like. Also, just quickly, it is on a double hinge, so there's framework inside that latches down when it comes up to accept the roof, and then there's also a normal latch in the back, just like a regular car would have. In here, it's all finished really nicely. It's got like a plastic headliner and all the interior trim pieces. I think they did a pretty good job with it. It is extremely noisy though. When you have the roof up and you're driving on a bumpy road or whatever, it's just creaking constantly. I've tried, putting foam between everything, and it doesn't really help. So luckily, most of the time when we're driving this car, the top is down, so we don't have to really deal with it, but it has regular latches just like any other convertible. So now we'll put the roof in the back. So you can see that opens up completely, and this is all of the area here. Now we'll go ahead and we'll put the roof up. Well, I guess we'll put the roof down. And then there's also a separate switch for these windows here, which regular S15s never had movable quarter windows because they were just glued into the quarter panel. So these are also Varietta specific, completely different, as well as this trim piece here. That's completely different one-off stuff just for the Varietta. But anyways, this is what the trunk looks like when the roof is in the down position, and you can see it fills the entire trunk other than that little like 8 inches below that leather flap thing. So there's a lot of engineering and stuff that went here. Also, another thing about this stuff, it's not hydraulic, it's all electric, all of the motors, and the motors are just power window motors. If the motors ever go for those, I think they're the same as like an S14 power window motor, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm hoping that they never go, but you never know. They very well could. So that's a little bit scary, but it's also one thing. A lot of people think they're hydraulic tops. They're not. They're all electric. And same with the trunk. There's a little power window motor on each one of those hinges, and then 2 in the center here for the roof. So now I'll put the trunk down. And then you hear it latch, and it's just back down in there. Where it latches, then this won't, rip up when you're going down the highway. Now moving into the interior, everything is pretty much the same. I think some of the designs or whatever for the seats are different, but as far as I know, they're the exact same interior wise. The dash, everything's the same. I believe that the back seats have been like stood up straight more because they needed extra room in the back. So you can see it's almost like at a 90. Getting in here, now you can see right here, it says roof, and then it has this button next to it. That was the OEM control and obviously button for the roof. So you'd hit this button and then the windows would go down, trunk would open up, roof would come up. When I got the car, the roof did not work. So I went through a lot of troubleshooting. It actually stayed in Japan for an extra month or 2 for them trying to figure it out. They had to replace the windshield because it was cracked. And then also they couldn't get the roof to work. So we finally just ended up saying, okay, just send the car. We'll figure it out when it gets here. So I stripped the whole interior out of this thing, chased all the wires, figured everything out. Behind this seat, there's actually like a little control module. I narrowed it down to that being fried. Briefly looked for a new one. I couldn't find any. What I ended up doing was actually cutting the wires to that, running power directly to switches, which I have mounted in here. So it's a little bit bulkier, a little bit, less efficient than just hitting one button. But this way, if any of those sensors in the rear didn't work, the whole top would not function. So you could be caught, in the rain or whatever, and your roof wouldn't work. So I just thought the best thing to do would be to bypass everything and just put it on switches. So there's no sensors involved. It's just power straight to the motors. And that's been working pretty good for me. So I got a release button here, and then obviously the quarter windows, the roof, and then the trunk just up and down. Pretty standard stuff. And then I made this panel to kind of block it all off. So I really lost a lot of space in my center console, but I can still fit my wallet in there and not really a problem. As for the rest of the interior, it's actually in pretty good shape. I'm pretty happy with it. Future plans would definitely be replacing the seats. So you can see they've kind of gone like bluish. I wouldn't mind putting some buckets in it. Dash is actually really clean. I do want to repaint all of this kind of gray because it's all stained and marked up and nasty. So I'd love to tear that apart, do that, and then also get a proper double din, maybe put like a screen in here or whatever, so that is finished. And then the interior will be pretty much done. I'm not too concerned, most of it is fairly clean and I'm happy with it. So now we've seen the outside, we've seen inside the trunk, we've seen inside the car. Next thing I want to do is just show in the engine bay, which is actually pretty unfortunate because I did the whole outside of the car and I basically ran out of time and I have not gotten to the engine bay yet. So what you're about to see is not great, but I just wanted to show it for informational purposes only. See, it's filthy in here. This is my next thing on the list, but it's just a stock SR20 DE, nothing crazy, stock airbox. Strut towers are pretty clean. The one seam here is starting to kind of bust out. So my plan is pull all the sheet metal off the front of this car, headlight, fenders, hood, everything, just get it off the car. I want to pull the motor, paint this engine bay either to match the outside or, a contrasting color that goes well, and basically shave and tub. I might tub this bay because obviously the car is pretty low. But yeah, I hate looking at this engine bay, so we're gonna stop right there. I think that this is actually one of the rarest Nissans ever made. I know there's a ton of people like, well, my car is the only one with a sunroof and made on this day in this year. And it's like, yeah, I understand there's, options lists and stuff like that, but this car, they pretty much changed the entire car. As far as I'm concerned, this is kind of its own model. And total production for the coupes, the regular ones, I think they made about 42,000 of those. They only made 1,143 of these. So that's pretty rare. And then if you want to go down the rabbit hole of colors and stuff like that, Varietta only colors, there's a white pearl that are extremely rare if you want to go that way. So in my opinion, S15 Varietta, one of the rarest Nissans ever made, and I'm just stoked that I get to own one. I can't believe that we found one I was able to afford it, get it here, and redo it. And it's a work in progress. There's a lot of stuff that I've done to it. I guess we'll go into that right now. And when I bought this car, like I said, it was in really rough shape. Roof didn't work, paint was peeling off. It was pretty terrible. So I got a really good deal on it. There wasn't much rust though. I had to do a little patch in this quarter panel, and then also on the other rocker, there's a little small patch where some of the spot welds were that I had to do. But other than that, the car had good bones. It was really solid and all there, which is really important with these cars. My original idea with this car was gonna be OEM Plus. I was gonna do the whole spec R kit. I have actually skirts and rear spat for this car, but I didn't know much about S15s at the time. And then when I went to go find the front bumper, I realized that it's like a $5,000 front bumper. So I immediately scrapped that idea. Like I said, I still have the certs and the spats, but I'm never getting the front bumper. So I ended up finding some pieces locally, like within 4 hours of going to pick up and getting dropped off, stuff like that. So I kind of came up with this kit. The rear, a lot of people hate it, but big fan of this. It's made by Wise Square, which is a pretty uncommon company. It's a really unique piece. It's got the whole diffuser and everything under there. I did black, and I think it came out really, really well. The spoiler is probably one of my favorite pieces. That is actually custom made. I fully built that because they don't make anything for Variettas because they're such a limited production car. Everything else is the same. So basically what this was like a D-Max Rep S15 coupe spoiler. And so this shape here and this shape here is all that's left. I remade the whole entire base, made it fit, and basically molded it to the car. It's obviously like it bolts on. It's not molded, but the shape underneath it fits perfectly to the trunk, and it came out really well. I have a whole series of videos going over how I did this and the process and all that. So if you want to check that out, that's pretty cool. The side skirts, they're kind of like a no-name rep type thing of kind of like a Nismo style side skirt. I was a pretty big fan of the little scoop thing there on the side, and then how many different levels there are to this skirt. So in the proper lighting, you can really see the flake jumping off of like every edge, like pops off here, off here, off here, and off here, which I think is really cool. If it was just like a straight whatever skirt, you kind of wouldn't really get that same effect. Obviously you have the Gandors as well. The big stock like Dumbo looking mirrors on these, I really don't like them. I actually did paint them to match, but then I found those, so that's definitely the way. Now the front bumper is custom, but it started out as a company called Stage 21, which I honestly have never heard of. But what this started out was, it had a giant vent triangle here, and then basically a huge canard that went off of this body line and down into here. It was like pretty crazy looking. And also the back of the bumper was about 1.5 inches lower than the front for some reason. So I had to cut the bottom off, move it up, and then cut that whole side panel off, basically refiberglass that. Gives it a nice clean look. I do kind of want to get kind of like the Origin style little splitter things to kind of match this, where they got like this shape. I think that would be really nice underneath the front bumper and basically coming up right here, just to add to it, because it's a little bit more plain than the rest of the kit now. But overall, I think it flows pretty good. Once I do that, I'll be really happy with it. Now, one of the final points I want to make, this is probably the #1 question, request, everything that I get is, what is this color? Honestly, in the videos and stuff, it doesn't really do it justice. There's a ton of flake in it, and it's actually pretty big, pretty good size. So this color is actually, it's a custom color. There's no paint code. What I did was, a buddy of mine had some stuff powder coated, and it was this like awesome purple, and I was like, man, that is just a very nice color. So I had that scanned, and they mixed it up. This is about as close as they could get to it. But I had an S14, I did it this exact same purple base coat, but then I put the rainbow flake over it. For this car, a little bit classier, a little bit more reserved. So I went with purple flake, and I think it matches the color really, really well. Instead of kind of jumping out, it just, I think, complements it really nicely. So yeah, stop asking for the paint code. There's no paint code, it's just a custom purple. There's a lot of really nice purples out there. If you want a nice color like this, you can definitely find something really close without being the exact same color, because there is no exact same color. So if you have any questions or any more information about these cars that I didn't talk about, maybe I'm unsure of them, maybe I just missed them, definitely drop them down in the comments, because I love learning stuff, and it's cool for other people that want to learn about these cars to just get all the information that they can. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like I said, I love this car. I love talking about this car. I can make an hour-long video just talking about this car. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want. If you're not, that would be cool. Hopefully you found this video informational, enjoyable, and I'll see you in the next one.